God is revealing his timing in everything, and it's time to make decisions for what God is doing. There's a fight in the Christian church right now concerning anti-Semitism. It has come into the church. Some Christians are calling people names and throwing the Bible at people. And we may, I've kept some of those slides, and I may interject that next week as well. We've talked a little bit about it, but it is not a very pleasant place when that happens. Especially the idea that when there's a fight with a Christian and somebody who doesn't know God, so they don't have the power of God, they don't understand the power of God. That doesn't mean we can't argue things, because even Paul argued things with the Jews and other things. But to be throwing the Bible out as a sharp instrument instead of a sharp defining tool, if you will, usually that's a weapon, let's say that, instead of a tool, is wrong. And that's kind of happening, and it's again, the Lord is revealing the hearts of every person when he does these things on the planet and between nations. And I want to remind you again as well that several times in the book of Proverbs, in the book of Daniel, and then we see and then we see what he does in the book of Kings and Chronicles and Samuel, that God is in the work of the nations, not just Israel, but the nations, in lifting up the kings and bringing them down and using them to judge his earth. So we need to take particular attention to what is going on, because God is involved in all of these things. And we've mentioned this before, that the idea of a deist God, who Jefferson and some others claim that God is, that he's a deist, that he, basically, simplistically, God made everything and he just spun it into, the universe and just let it go on its own. Things take its course. That's not God. And we saw in the book of Ruth this morning, didn't we? That God is intrinsically involved in everybody's life, in everything. And he doesn't lose control. And so here we have Aramco makes 2 new natural gas discoveries in Saudi Arabia, like they need it. Like they need more money. And by the way, in addition to the 2 new fields, another field was discovered, and natural gas was also discovered in 5 reservoirs, already previously discovered reservoirs. So again, Saudi Arabia is making money hand over fist. Now, think about this. We have the COVID, we have the Ukraine-Russia war, and Saudi Arabia and these other Arab countries are making money hand over fist, and so is the United States. And again, I just want to emphasize this idea that Saudi Arabia is worried about their global standing and their money. And they're going to make decisions based on that. They're not going to make decisions based on the Palestinians or Gaza. They're going to base it on security. Remember, peace and security. And that's kind of the idea going forward. So just keep that in mind as this war continues and things unfold. Along those same lines, China has put itself in a difficult spot. Over the years, it has offered the Palestinians little genuine assistance. China has no investment in the Palestinian Authority areas. Trade is very low, and humanitarian aid in the to the Palestinians are considerably behind aid from other countries. But rhetorically, China made sure to pay lip service to the Palestinians, mainly to please the Arab countries. Therefore, when Hamas terrorists massacred Israeli civilians in horrific atrocities, China failed to recognize the magnitude of the event and launched its typical neutral response. And it really didn't get involved. Remember, at one point, they sent a couple warships around to the Persian Gulf, but those are so minuscule to what's compared with the United States has there. And then if you back that up with the UK and others. So according to Lavi, since the war began, high-profile visits to Israel by not only Blinken but also U.S. President Joe Biden have shown that the U.S. has not departed from the region, contrary to China's claim in recent years. And what we talked about, remember, he was trying to get out. Biden was trying to get out of the Middle East. So that China was saying, well, they basically left, let us be the broker here. And Russia was doing the same thing until they jumped into Ukraine. So the U.S. has not departed from the region. By contrast, Wang has not visited, and China's top leader, Xi has not held a single phone call with any regional leader. Arab countries can now see who can be trusted in times of need, and it is not China, which has made itself almost irrelevant. Now, again, Biden came into this with a lot of irrelevance as well. But when the aircraft carriers showed up, right? And when, you got 5,000 people on each aircraft carrier, you've got 70 to 80 planes on, 60 to 80. The Ford has probably about 80 planes on it. And you've got all that armory with the destroyers and the cruisers that are coming along, all the cruise missiles. When the United States shows up with that kind of power, you have to kind of pay attention. And so now the West, the United States, has become the broker again. We kind of stepped in where China was trying to take over. And now they have to listen to us, and that's going to come up in our discussion here a little bit later. Westminster Abbey. Here's some Muslims. Amir said that there were 500 mosques in London. I went and looked it up. There's 1,500 mosques in London alone. And these people decide that they're going to go to Westminster Abbey and take over their grounds and do their prayer. And so this is antagonism. This is just who they are and what they are. And it goes to something that's going to be said later. Okay? Allah has given the Muslims, the world, the right to all these things, and they think they can just take it, go in and take it. And so that is the idea. Now, just a reminder, we have, we probably have 2% Muslim Islam in the United States, maybe. Those vary with every body that comes across the border. So it's very low percent. However, I want to remind you, most people say, well, most of them are peace-loving. And I just want to remind you, because every time this comes up, I just sense I have to remind you that who rules over them is the Quran. What rules over them is the Quran and the idea of Islam, which means submit. Okay, it means submit. And the world must submit to Islam and Allah. So that is the issue with Islam. The Swiss government decides to ban Hamas. So, wow, where did their neutrality go? They're out. They want to kick Hamas out. They want to, and it's a little late, isn't it? We're going to see if it's real late. Here is the Netherlands. The Dutch, Geert Wilders, said in the last days before the elections, I was silenced by the progressive media for 20 years because of my views on the extreme Islam that is taking over Europe and the world. No more. Now, we've showed his pictures. I don't know if you remember it, but it's been several years. He was in the elections. He's far right as we look at it. He's been calling out the Islamic issue for years. He's very conservative, and some people even call extreme. For him to come into power in the Netherlands is crazy. It's pretty crazy. So, and there's been some shifts in Germany before and some of these other nations, and people, well, okay, is this going to be a big shift because the people are sick and tired of the Islamic issue? We'll see. We will see. But this is a major issue because Netherlands is one of the most liberal countries on the planet as far as, just about everything.
How's his first name pronounced?
Geert. So this will be interesting to watch. And again, the issue with Islam, that is the issue on the planet right now. Christianity is like we're the little kids on the block now. Islam needs to be paid attention to, and the question is it too late for Europe? And if America doesn't wake up, it's going to be too late for America. It is not too late for America if we stop the borders and got control on things right now. We still have, there's so small numbers, but again, when you say there are a couple million, that's a large number. But we have 340 million people in the United States, and so it's relatively small. It's still, in percentage-wise, relatively small over there, but not in the cities, not around the cities, so that you can get 1 million Muslims gathered around, and it becomes pretty scary. So that's kind of the idea. So he tweets out, somebody tweeted out here from Hamas. We strongly condemn the statement of the Dutch extremist Wilders, who calls for the displacement of our people to Jordan, which calls for a widespread international condemnation. We in Islamic resistant movement, Hamas, condemn this. And then he tweeted out, Hamas complaining about international law. So he has already weighed in here, and he's saying Jordan should take these people. Jordan won't. They already have about 3 million now, and it's probably their biggest problem. What does Jordan need more than anything right now? They have gas, they have oil. What do they need? They always need water. Where do they get their water? From Israel. Israel's desalinating water and sending it to Jordan, and then Jordan swaps that for energy. And Jordan just said the other day, we're going to wash our hands with Israel. And we're going to listen to Mordecai Kedar here in a few minutes. And he basically said, Jordan can't live without Israel right now. They're talking like Saudi Arabia. They're speaking a good story, but they cannot back it up. Jordan's even threatening a war. And that's ridiculous. And remember, they're landlocked. Everybody flies over somebody to them. They can't get water, like I said, and all kinds of things. So Jordan is a problem because they have most of the Palestinians, and they feel it every day. We strongly condemn the statement of the Dutch extremists. I already mentioned that. So disturbances in Ireland and protests against Muslims in Dublin, the capital of Ireland, are getting out of control. The rioters are now burning down the Holiday Inn Express hotel where the progressive government is housing Muslim asylum seekers. And so I had a good discussion with a friend the other day, and I mentioned it here, that it very well may be that this issue brings rise to the Antichrist. Because it's mentioned, I believe it's mentioned in Daniel chapter 2. It could be, let me just put it that way. And this problem of Islam is mentioned, I believe, it could be, with the beheading of people in the book of Revelation. And the idea of Ishmael being a wild donkey against all his brothers. That whole issue there could be a real player in the end times. We don't know. We'll see. However, it's raised its ugly head in Europe, and it is coming to a head to where now the conservatives and the Europeans, if I can put it that way, are getting sick of this problem and are trying to take it to the government and trying to take it to Islam, if you will. Ireland, for whatever reason, their government is as progressive as anybody on the planet. And they're sticking to their guns about this Islamic issue, about backing up Islam. Now, some people, it was interesting, there was a conversation the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but they asked somebody why Ireland is that way. And they said it goes back to the Catholic-Protestant issue. It goes back to the segregation and how the Protestants were treated by the Catholics and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not sure if it probably plays something into it. I don't know all the background of all that. But there's a real problem in all of Europe. According to the reports, the force raided 15 targets in Berlin. This is Germany now. Lower Saxony, North Rhine, Westphalia, and Schleswig Holstein, with the focus being on senior activists in the organizations of the Palestinian community in Germany, which was defined as the most important organization for Hamas supporters in Germany. Now, there's a lot of Kurds in Germany. There's a lot of Turks in Germany. They hate each other. So they've got that problem. They've been dealing with that problem for the last 10 or 15 years or more. And now you've got the Christians are really just kind of going to sleep in Europe. So it's not really a Christian Islamic issue. I'm not saying it couldn't be or become one, but it's more of a Western versus Eastern issue. A mindset that, remember, Islam has been given everything by Allah. They deserve everything because Allah's given it to them. Israeli-owned, this is the third incident, Israeli-owned ship targeted by a triangle-shaped bomb carrying a Shahed 136 drone. So that is the same drone that's being used in Ukraine. The Iranians have shipped them up to Russia to use in Ukraine. And so now the Houthis in Yemen are using these, and others are using these on an Israeli billionaire, I guess, owns this ship and some others, but that's the target. This, I think, is in the United States. Some skydivers got together and formed the star there. The U.S. military carried out an early morning attack against al-Shabaab organization in Iraq, killing 6 of the organization's missile unit. This is the second night in a row that the U.S. carries out attacks on Iraqi territory against an Iranian proxy. So 2 things here. They finally attacked in Iraq, the United States did. They finally went back against Iraqi units. They've been staying in Syria, trying not to upset the apple cart, because remember, the Iraqi president is concerned about getting the war coming to his territory. And so he's he's been successful in telling the United States not to attack units in Iraq, even though the missiles that are killing our people are coming, or hurting our people, are coming, many of them from Iraq. So finally the United States said enough is enough, and they actually killed 6 men there. After this war, the Americans is so heavily weighed in, it will be interesting what happens in the Middle East when Russia and China did nothing. Who will Saudi Arabia run to for help? These are my words. Who will the Arabs rely on? The strength that showed up after October 7, 2023? There should be a question mark there. This is to me, is a very, very interesting time leading up to Ezekiel 38 and 9 at some point. Remember, Biden wanted out and God said, you're not getting out. He drug him back in. And we are there in a force that has never, never been seen, with all the cruise missiles and the ships and the planes, the F-35s, the F-22s have never been in war like this. And so, and now Israel, by the way, has 50 F-35s, and there's another 25 coming. So this kind of firepower in the Middle East has never been seen, and it is leading up to biblical times. Biden wants a Gaza reunified with the West Bank. So now that he has brought all this power, and he's successfully now securing Israel, then it will be interesting how much pressure he puts on the next government. And again, Netanyahu's probably out. He's probably not going to be able to survive this. I would give him very, very little chance of surviving this. So then what? You know, we've seen others, and it hasn't played out real well. There's what Gaza's looking like. They're clearing it out, and we know that people are being released now. I want to talk a little bit about this festival that was going on in southern Israel there. It was about 6 miles from Gaza. It's called...
Before the attack, right?
It was the morning of the attack on the 7th of October. It was it's called a supernova or nova dance. So let me just read this. Supernova Sukkot Gathering was a weekend-long outdoor trance music festival that began on 6 October 2023, produced by an organizer called the tribe of Nova. It was an Israeli edition of the Universo Parallelo, a psych trance festival. It already doesn't sound good, does it? Started 23 years ago prior in Brazil. It was held 3 miles from Gaza. The lineup included artists well known in the psych trance scene, such as Astral Projection and A Man with No Name. Organizers switched to the site only 2 days before, after the original location in southern Israel did not work out. It was scheduled to coincide with the Jewish holidays, the final day of Sukkot, which is the 6th, and Simchat Torah, the 7th. And the rave was billed as a celebration of friends, love, and infinite freedom. Attendees described the crowd as mostly consisting of Israelis of about 20 to 40 years of age from across the country. Attendance was reported to be 3,500, but figures vary. Security guards and police were present at the festival. So there's still questions. People still say that, you can see the Nova Festival there. So people still say, well, they didn't know this was going on. And yet it was advertised months in advance, and it's something that's been happening. That festival is something that's been happening every year, so probably somebody had wind of it. Some suggest that drones were flying around and they saw the festival, and then terrorists got drawn to it. They really don't know exactly what happened. But, the idea here is this. Again, they are innocent before mankind. They didn't hurt the Gazans. They haven't hurt anybody else. But the Lord's not happy with this kind of stuff. And I would suggest that we not place the guilt on these people, but we place the guilt on the world for this coming to what we have coming at us right now. Israel is in a very, very dark place. They're letting transgenders and LGBT march in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, their capital, and they're dividing up the land and all of this stuff. So while we don't want to place blame on these people, they're innocent people, and it's very, very sad, very sad deal. But the point here is that God is not happy with Israel. And we, as a church, and I believe Israel, that's something we need to understand. Because this is only happening because God is letting it happen. And if he was pleased with them, this would not be happening. In general, bad things happen to good people, that kind of thing. God allows those things to happen. But remember what his promises were in the Old Testament. That if they relied on God and were close to him, that he would be their shield and buckler. Okay? So that's kind of the concept. But now in southern Israel, people are returning home to what little homes they have now and cleaning up. And we know that people are being released with the help of Qatar. Let's just talk about Qatar for a minute. Qatar is almost basically an island. In fact, Saudi Arabia and Qatar got in a huge fight here a couple years ago. And Saudi Arabia cut a trench through there to make sure Qatar knew it was an island. And so Qatar, again, we call them, Saudi Arabia call them the big dog. Qatar is kind of the little dog. But Qatar is extremist in general. It has, it's very, very, very rich, of course. And it backs the Muslim Brotherhood. And so back in Obama's days, he told the prince there, that we will come and build the largest base in the Middle East, in Qatar, and then we'll let you house Hamas here, the leaders of Hamas. So that's just one of the things. There was some other things that they had to give up. But the idea here was that Hamas leaders are in very, very rich hotels in Qatar calling the shots while their people are dying over there in Gaza. And that was under the Obama reign that this happened. So you have to have somebody between a really, really bad guy and what we would consider good people or our friends, allies, to be able to call for some kind of peace, some kind of hostage release, and that's what's happening. That the West can generally work with Qatar, and of course we know that Hamas has worked with Qatar. So that's how the hostages are being released. This is the third release. Actually, this one's the first here, but there's been three releases. Here's the Asher family. The two little girls come back home. The two little girls are on the left. They're 4 and 2. Their crime was being Jewish. And this lady on the right is 24, and she was released by the West, by Israel. And her crime was stabbing somebody. Here's another one. Here's a grandma. Her only crime was being Jewish. And here's another one, 33. Her crime, again, was stabbing. And we can go on. We can keep going on.
So you're talking about the prisoner exchange.
A prisoner exchange here, right. So Hamas has released these grandmas, only women, no men, has released grandmas and women and children, and no men. And it's a 3-to-1 exchange. So Hamas is getting away with literally murder here. It's really interesting because I went to the CNN. I tried to look at the list of people who have been released by Israel, because CNN says there's children being released by Israel. And their children, if you call 17, 18, 19 children, and they are, right? They're being released to their moms, who are very grateful in Gaza and in Islam. But they're not 2 and 4 years old. And again, the atrocities that have happened in southern Israel, it's horrible. We're going to get to, again, a little bit more of that. Trump says he blasts U.S. leaders after no Americans among Hamas hostages are released. And I do believe that if he was leading this thing, that it would be different. Remember that he went to, and again, I think it was the prime minister, one of the heads of the terrorist group up north, and he was dealing with him. And I wish I could remember now, but he's working with this man, and he's saying, "This is what I want," and the man was saying no, and then Trump showed him a computer with the man's house on it. Remember that? And said, "See, I know where you live, and I know where your family is, and there's a drone right up above. So what do you want to do?" And again, he understands. That's one thing Trump does understand, that you carry a big stick. And that's what Reagan's idea here was as well. 39 Palestinian prisoners and detainees released last night in the exchange. Britain shows up. Cameron, he's projecting a UK strength in Israel, but he is calling for a ceasefire. So there's some of the West is backing up here. But again, if we're listening to Germany, if we're listening to Sunak in the UK, if we're listening to some others, they know that Israel has a right to defend itself and that Hamas has to go. And so I think that we will continue to play this out. Jordan, Israel will not enjoy security unless the Palestinians enjoy it. So they're just talking a mean streak. They're not going anywhere. During the ceasefire, you can see that Hezbollah is trying to make a statement up in the north, missiles up in the north of Israel there. No big deal. The day of the October 7th, Biden released $10 billion to Iran. Al-Qaeda says, we're in. If you want us, we're in. In the West Bank, the Israelis are still trying to track down the terrorists who are causing problems there. So that's still going on in the West Bank. Several killed in Jenin the other day and taken prisoner in Jenin, which is north of Jerusalem, and in the West Bank there. They're anticipating a big aliyah. We've talked about some of this, that it's going to be really, really interesting. And this is, if I had to be a prophet right now, which I'm not, but I think that this is probably going to come out really good for Israel in the long run for a while, and that there's going to be Jews going home because of all this anti-Semitism in the world. And it is really, really become pretty awful. The laser beam, which is called now it's called the iron beam now. This is the iron beam. They did use it just a few days ago to shoot down a rocket, so it is being used, and the United States is already looking at buying it. The Biden administration's $106 billion package for Israel, Ukraine, and U.S. border security includes $1.2 billion for Israel's Iron Beam laser system. The U.S. hopes that the trial of the system will eventually also benefit the U.S. Army, and so, that goes without saying. The Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Salami, jihad has always been an inevitable part of the history of Islam. The Zionist regime is like a dagger plunged into the body of the Islamic world. So that's what we need to know. If at this point we don't understand that is part of Iran, part of Hezbollah, part of the Houthis' scheme here, we need to wake up, because this is what they're after worldwide. They want a worldwide war so that that the Mahdi will come back. All right? So we're going to talk about Hezbollah for a little bit here. Hezbollah's Secretary General Nasrallah held talks with the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement in the Gaza Strip and the top representatives of Hamas in Lebanon. They emphasized the importance of continuous efforts and coordination while maintaining stability to realize, here's the key, to realize the promised divine victory. Okay? So in other words, they're willing to make sacrifices. We need to stay together because we're willing to make sacrifices. Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah, Qassam, advanced knowledge of the October 7th attack wasn't important to us. Hezbollah's participation is an integral part of the second stage of the war. That's a lie. That's a lie. It was important to them. And we're going to talk to, now, John Holler's mentioned him a few times. I've listened to him a few times. It's been a while. A man named Mordecai Kadar. And he's probably the leading Islamic expert on the planet. He happens to be Jewish, by the way. And he's brilliant. We're going to get to his thoughts on this. Did Lebanon dodge a bullet? In other words, they didn't jump into the war, and so Israel didn't wipe them out. Okay? That did not happen. One of the main reasons for that is that Hezbollah is the single largest investment Iran has made outside of its borders. In other words, the reason they are not engaged is because Iran doesn't want them engaged. Now, we're going to watch the reasoning for this. That investment has been Hezbollah attacking Israeli troops since October 8th. Israel fought a 5-week war with Hezbollah in 2006 after the group's fighters kidnapped 2 Israeli soldiers during a cross-border raid. The conflict left an estimated 1,200 Lebanese and 157 Israelis, mostly soldiers, dead, displaced 4.5 million Lebanese civilians, and caused damage to civilian infrastructure in Lebanon totaling $2.8 billion. Hezbollah is the first line for deterrence and defense for the Iranian regime and its nuclear program if Israel decides to strike, and it is not going to waste that to try and save Hamas. Okay? Now, you would think, well, Hamas is our brothers, right? Just keep that in mind. The Americans playing the role of mediator, they don't want a war either, I'll put, especially in a re-election year. The Gulf states are focused on economic growth, Saudi Arabia and their money, and the price of oil, and they don't want a war. Neither does Iran or its proxies. Iran achieved most of its objectives, such as disrupting Israeli Saudi diplomatic normalization, and the Abraham Accords are on hold, and shattering the myth of Israel's invulnerability. American efforts at deterrence have worked, whether it is via the aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean or in the Gulf, or the quiet diplomacy via messages that have been sent to Iran via various interlocutors, warning of the consequences that America would very much get involved if the war spreads. Lebanon has dodged a bullet so far. What we are doing in Gaza, we can do in Beirut, Gallant said, November 11th, in a warning to Hezbollah against escalation. So there's the warning, and the United States is warning, and we're there, everything has showed up, so now Hezbollah hasn't got involved, and Iran hasn't got involved. But what is the main reason why they did not take the opportunity when Israel was a complete mess? The rockets surprised them. 1,200, now up to 1,400 people are dead. Why didn't Hezbollah jump in? Let's listen. We're going to go through Mordecai Kedar. We're going to listen to him a little bit. And then we're going to talk about who Hezbollah is and where their loyalties lie. Okay? Let's talk about this.
We projected our mindset on them as if they want the same thing. And they actually gave us the impression that this is what they want, especially when they insisted on having 20, 30,000 workers come out from Gaza every day in order to work in the Israeli industry, in the Israeli agriculture, in the construction industry, whatever. And this actually gave the government of Israel and the intelligence and everybody who was around them the impression that all they want is to have a nice, quiet, normal, developed state in Gaza. While, behind the scenes, they developed a giant army with weapons which came from Iran, with a real intention to arrange an assault on us when we are asleep, when we are not prepared. This was the plan. However, and here comes the big however, Hamas were not supposed to use all the weapons and the equipment and the training and the support which they got from Iran for years already. They should have waited until Iran would give the clue, means the order, to Hamas, to Hezbollah in Lebanon, to the militias in Syria, the militias in Iraq, the Houthi militias in Yemen, in addition to the Hamas activists or terrorists in Judea and Samaria, and possibly the Islamic movement inside Israel. For years, they were working on uniting all these militias. This was what Soleimani was doing, then after him, Khani. And this what explains the frequent visits which he visited in Lebanon, in Syria, wherever he went. He always met with delegates from Hamas, from Islamic Jihad, from Hezbollah, the militias, in order to convince them to leave out all the differences, because these are Palestinians, these are Syrians, these are Lebanese, these are Shia, these are Sunni, in order to cooperate on one thing, the eradication of the state of Israel. I published a whole article about this plan, satanic plan, in April this year, means 7 months ago. And I described it. It was also translated to English. You can Google it, you can find it. And this was actually, it was not new for the Israeli intelligence. They assumed, and they knew, what Iran is trying to unite them all for one big hit on Israel, because they all knew that Israel will not survive such a hit, because if Israel has a barrage of thousands of missiles from Lebanon in one day in addition to Hamas, in addition to incursion of infantry on tractors or whatever, CUVs, in the north, in the south, and capturing thousands of hostages as they did in Gaza. Near Gaza, they could do it in the north as well. And they could capture cities like Nahariya, Shlomi, Kiryat Shmone, Rosh Pina, which are next to the border. And this is what they planned. And whole assault, and this barrage of missiles should have destroyed Israeli electricity system, the air bases of the Air Force, the junctions, the communications, whatever. Israel would be paralyzed within hours. And all the storage of the anti-missile missiles like the Iron Dome would be exhausted in half a day or 2 days maximum, and Israel would be devastated totally. Nobody would be here. It would be a whole surprise for the whole world. And the Israel will actually be gone within 2 days or 3 days. This was
So Hamas actually spoiled the plan.
This was the plan. And Hamas got all the equipment, all the arms, all the ammunition, all the support from Iran, and they decided to open a war by themselves. Means to leave the unity which Iran tried to create and to wage a war by themselves. Why? First of all, they assumed that after the surprise in the beginning, because they didn't tell neither Hezbollah nor Iran, nobody, that they are preparing such an assault by themselves. And this is why Hezbollah and Iran have not joined until this very day. And we speak today. Today we are at the 9th of November. And the whole thing started 32 days ago. Means that Hezbollah and Iran factually abandoned Hamas, telling them, you started the war without us, the hell with you. Let the Zionists do it. But what Hezbollah is doing with us on the border is nothing compared to what they can, based on their stockpile of hundreds of thousands of missiles.
So what he's saying is that Hamas started it on their own after all the support that they got from Hezbollah and especially Iran. They decided to do it on their own. And so Hezbollah and Iran are saying, you started it, you finish it, we're not getting involved. Now that's only a part of it, and what's coming up will help us more, even understand more why they are sacrificing Hamas, okay? So here's a little bit more.
In the culture of the Middle East, this is the more or less usual thing. This is what people do in Syria. The uprising which started in 2011.
He's talking about brutality now.
How do you think the local authorities, the authorities in Syria, treated the rebels the same way? In Iraq, the same way. Darfur, in Sudan. This is the culture of the Middle East, unfortunately. Woe to the losers. And this is based on long history of tribalism. Because, look, you have to understand the mindset. Here in the Middle East, it's not only Islam plays a role, it's also the tribal, the social heritage which preceded Islam many, many years. This area is a desert, giant desert, all the way from Morocco in the west to Iraq in the east, from Syria in the north to Yemen in the south. 98% of the Middle East is a dry, arid desert. And in a desert, if you want to survive, you need a source of water. And if your source of water is dried out, what do? You go to another place where they have water, and you fight them in order to take the water. Otherwise, you will die. And therefore, the fight over water in the Middle East, I'm talking about for thousands of years already, is a fight, for death and life. So, in order to deter the others, You have to be vicious. And they have to know that nobody should mess with you, because you will slaughter them, you will rape their daughters, you will do to them whatever they don't like to be done in order to deter them. So they will leave you alone with your war. And therefore, this cruel attitude between people in the Middle East is well known. You know, Gaddafi in Libya, the name of his tribe, Gaddafi is an adjective. The name of his tribe was Gaddafi Dam, which means in Arabic, the one who sheds blood, not his own, the others. And according to all the stories in Libya, they got their name for a good reason, because this was a small tribe which was forced to treat its enemies in such a way in order to deter them. So here, cruelty in the Middle East is the name of the game. And you know, if in modern times it was translated to the idea that, or to the rule that if you shoot the second, you don't shoot anymore ever, because you are dead already.
Well, you get
This is why violence is a very immediate tool to use, because you cannot allow yourself to be nice when the others are violent. You have to be violent before them.
Now, Mordechai, I saw in the news.
Now, he goes on there to say that the gentleman was going to ask him about Jordan, why Jordan hasn't gotten involved, and if Jordan would get involved. And he said, you know, Jordan doesn't have water, they're not going to get involved. Jordan needs everybody else. We don't need them. But he's going to go on there to say that that Allah promised Islam everything, and that they have the right to take the infidels' land, their women, their goods, and all that kind of stuff. And we can see that in the Old Testament, can't we? We see the tribes, especially in Judges, taking basically whatever they want. And what, like he said there, if you shoot first, you don't have to shoot the second time, because everybody's afraid of you. So that's the concept in the Islamic thinking, okay? Now, when asked if he thinks Iran or Hezbollah could enter the war, and if he thought the United States war machine in the Mediterranean had anything to do with them not getting involved, Qadar said Iran and the militias had 12 good days to attack before the U.S. arrival of the force. So they didn't get involved. They're still not involved up to this day. Hezbollah is shooting some rockets and doing some things in the north, but they're not involved, and Iran is staying completely out of it. So this tells you what is happening right now is that Hamas, again, is being sacrificed. It happened early in the morning because some of them would be drunk. He's talking about the festival. Some were on drugs. They would be tired after dancing through the whole night. They figured they would be attacking a bunch of infidels, scantily clothed, listening to the Indian music. By the way, the festival was on live broadcast. The people of Hamas hate it because this is the essence of the Western music, Western culture, openness, and what they say is Western corruption. He goes on to say the others are conglomerates of many groups. Now I'm not sure if you could hear what he was saying. The issue in the Middle East is about tribalism. Remember what Jesus said? Kingdom against kingdom. Ethnicity against ethnicity is the words there. The others are conglomerates of many groups. For example, Iraq has 47 tribes, 10 religious, numerous sects, 4 ethnic groups. Syria is the same, and the others are similar, different clans, religious groups, and sectarian groups. They could have united within their borders if they would have married. They're talking about Gaza, but they do not intermarry. They remain clannish. So Gaza's a clan. The West Bank is a clan. A bunch of Palestinians there. Even in Jordan, they're having this clannish issue. His answer to the Middle East problem is to raise a strong family clan like a government. There's one in Ramallah, put one in Jericho, put one in Jenin, Takium, and one in Nablus. Then do the same for Gaza and the entire Palestinian Authority, which consists of many clans and political isms right now. A single clan wants stability and would kick out the terrorist. Now, how does he get that information? Because again, that's what Gaddafi did. That's what Saddam Hussein did. That's what Saudi Arabia does. Okay? That the family of Saud in Saudi Arabia runs Saudi Arabia. And even if within their own family they get out of whack, they take them out. And so that's what he is suggesting. Now, again, that's his suggestion for the Middle East and the Palestinian issue. I'm not sure we could get there. But here's the real here's what is behind the Hamas and the Hezbollah issue. It's Sunni versus Shia. Chalk one up for the Shiites. Look at this map. This is the number, the darker shades are 56 to 100% of Shiites. So you see Iran is 90 to 95 Shiite. That's religious Islam, okay? Iraq is 60 to 70%. Look at Turkey. Turkey is up to 20%. Saudi Arabia is about the same. So Saudi Arabia they've had a couple problems in Saudi Arabia in the past. They've crushed any uprisings there, but they have some pockets of Shiites there. Look at Yemen down in the south there. That's about 21 to 55%. But look at the northern Africa there. It's very low, less than 1%. So this is a Shiite Sunni issue. Remember, he's a Sunni.
At its heart, what is this rift about? Is it a battle for Islam?
Iran
is not a rival to Saudi Arabia. Its army is not among the top 5 armies in the Muslim world. The Saudi economy is larger than the Iranian economy. Iran is far from being equal to Saudi Arabia.
But I've seen that you called the Ayatollah Khamenei the new Hitler of the Middle East.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he wants to expand. He wants to create his own project in the Middle East, very much like Hitler, who wanted to expand at the time. Many countries around the world and in Europe did not realize how dangerous Hitler was until what happened happened. I don't want to see the same events happening in the Middle East.
Does Saudi Arabia need nuclear weapons to counter Iran?
Saudi Arabia does not want to acquire any nuclear bomb. But without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible.
Okay. Now you see the issue. That was a very recent interview, by the way. Now, Lebanon, let's go to Lebanon where Hezbollah is. And let's talk about, okay, so first of all, Hamas. Hamas is Sunni, right? Remember, Muhammad died. He supposedly left his caliphate to his uncle, if I remember right. And then the Shiites brought a cousin and said, no, it belongs to the cousin, all right? And that's how it happened. And they've been fighting ever since. So Hamas is Sunni, the Palestinians are generally Sunni, and Hezbollah in Lebanon is Shiite, all right? And Hezbollah means the party of God, by the way, party of Allah. Lebanon was a Democrat. I don't know if you know this, but there was a lot of Christians, there still is. They're Orthodox, kind of like a Catholic Orthodox Christianity up there. There's still quite a few Christians up there, but they've been squashed for the last 20 years or more. Lebanon was democratic, liberal, in comparison to its Arabs and the Muslim neighbors. This allowed for teachers to come in, Islamic teachers to come in, and to set a foundation for deepening the Shia Islam. So what they found in the teachings that went into Lebanon, and he's holding one of the pamphlets there, is a picture of the Khomeini there, the Ayatollah there. And it was published in 2006 from a speech in Persian translated to Arabic. And it's called The Echo of the Loyalty. Khomeini says the strategic depth of the Iranian nation to Palestine, to North Africa, to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, etc., to Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent, that's northern India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. In other words, all the Islamic parts of the world, they think the whole world belongs to them, that has been given to them by Allah. Here's another one. It's called the Muhammad there. He's been given the light there, and the light is actually, I believe that light, the guy with the light there is the Imam right now, the 12th Imam to come, and he visits Khomeini, okay, the Ayatollah. And so he is projecting the light onto Khomeini. And that's the 12th Imam, is the 12th descendant of Ali, the founder of the Shia, who disappeared 1,000 years ago, who is still alive according to them. He hides in a cave. I'm not sure why he's hiding. Somewhere in Central Asia, and he will come one day in order to redeem the world. And this is the Mahdi. And since he is made of light, he enlightens the Ayatollahs. And by the way, he's going to be the one that teaches the Christians that we were wrong in serving Jesus Christ. Here's another publication. You can see the light there, and the light goes to the head and to the eyes and to the heart and to the hands for the deeds, right? The publication, the lines of light, thoughts, views, iterations, the feelings, and the deeds. He cannot make any mistake. The Ayatollah now, because of this, can't make any mistake according to, in other words, everybody has to do what he says because he can't make a mistake. And then along with all those pamphlets, they found this, a long curse against the Sunni. A long curse against the Sunnah. Here he holds the shield of victory, produced in 2000 when the U.S. left Lebanon. At the top it says, in the name of Allah, the merciful and compassionate, Hezbollah, the party of Allah, who are the winners. Did you hear Kedar say the losers? They are the losers and we are the winners. Here he's saying it, Hezbollah is the party of the winners. Islam says, now of course there are the kind of jinn, the evil ones, that would belong to the satanic category. Indeed, it is Satan's confederates who are the losers. So anybody on the other side, the Sunnah are the losers. Okay? The Shia are the winners. 1948, 1956, 67, 73, all these wars which they have lost, they are Hezbollah, they belong to Satan. The losers belong to Satan. Here was Lebanon's flag, red and white. How many red and white flags are in the West? Lots of them, right? Red and white is much like many Western flags. The cedar of Lebanon has its origins in many biblical references. The cedar tree was a symbol of the Christians. They did not put the cross there, for they feared the French did not like it and it would have been too much. But Christians ruled a large part of Lebanon. But now the Hezbollah has moved in and put in this flag instead of the Christian looking flag. This shield is a picture of the earth. The Shia are buried in the earth because of the oppression which they suffered from the Sunnah. From the Sunnah, right? The flag reveals a resurrection of the Shia because you can see the hand coming out of the earth and it is clutching the AK-47, and they tear the fence in which they were buried. The top line says, then surely the party of God, Hezbollah, are they that shall be triumphant. They're the winners. The first letter of Allah reaches up to grab the weapon. The bottom line, the Islamic resistance in Lebanon. The green color, as mentioned in the Holy Quran, has a very special meaning than any other colors. It represents goodness, bliss, beauty, fertility, and sunshine. Allah, the Almighty, has described that the people of heaven are wearing basically in silk green color, and the beds that recline them carousing in paradise. Green is, in Islamic symbolism, is inextricably linked to the Islamic prophet Muhammad, and the color is mentioned numerous times in the Quran. As a traditionally Islamic color, the usage of green on the flag is an overtly politically and explicitly religious statement. The rifle also represents Hezbollah's belief in an armed struggle against the oppressive forces. Islam is not suicidal. When they face a powerful enemy who is dangerous and threatened, they are allowed to give him temporary peace. It's called hudna, which is called the tribe culture, which is the Islamic culture, is called the Hudaybiyah peace, and it's named after a place. The Pact of Hudaybiyah happened in 628, comprised a compromise that reached between Muhammad and Meccan leaders, in which Mecca gave political and religious recognition to the growing community of Muslims in Medina. So here's what was happening. Muhammad was headed to Medina, and he was going to wipe them out. And these men come out. They could have wiped out Muhammad. They have much more men. And they made a peace in a place called Hudaybiyah. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah was an event that took place during the lifetime of Muhammad. It was a pivotal treaty between the Muhammad representing the state of Medina and the tribe of Mecca in January 628. The treaty helped to decrease tension between the two cities, affirmed peace for 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days, and authorized Muhammad's followers to return the following year in a peaceful pilgrimage, which was later known as the First Pilgrimage. After 2 years, the army enemies of Muhammad went to Asia Minor thinking all is right, all is well. They're going up to Turkey. They were put to sleep by the hand of Allah, the Shia say. And therefore, the Sunni say. And therefore, Muhammad entered Mecca and slaughtered all who would not convert to Islam. Therefore, temporary peace is authorized. Muhammad was guided by light, and he was infallible. So here's what Kedar says. So the point, we have temporary peace for as long as it takes. If we are stronger and more powerful and threatening forever. So there's two things that he thinks would bring Iran into a war. The nuclear bomb and the removal of the United States. Now, again, this sounds biblical because something has to happen for Iran to give up Hezbollah. They're not going to give up Hezbollah. There's too many arms over there. There's too many troops over there. And now the United States is holding them at bay. So they're going to continue to play this game until they're ready to come. Now, I want to remind you that in Ezekiel 38, the Bible says that God brings them down, right? God brings them down. So something has to happen to allow all of that to happen. In the meantime, Gaza is going to be taken care of, however this works out. I think Netanyahu's not going to give up, and either are the Israelis. All the Israelis are behind him. They're going to clear out Gaza. It's going to go back to being rebuilt with a different setup probably, and Israel's probably going to strengthen and then look different in the future. And then that just simply says what the other states, that just simply states that the political issues of Kuwait and Qatar and Dubai and Oman, they look different than Gaza. They look different than Palestine. They look different than Lebanon. They are stable because they have a tribe. They have a tribe leading the issue there. Finally, I'm going to say this. I don't think President Obama is out of the picture. I'm pretty convinced of it. We bring him up every great once in a while. But I believe that he is involved in what is happening here. Now, you talk to people who know this stuff way better than most of us or all of us. They say that, honestly, what is happening in Israel right now is a good thing as far as getting possibly 50 people out, maybe more. It's a really, really good thing. But who is forcing that to happen? What is happening behind the scenes is a very, very heavy hand on Netanyahu and Israel. And so we're going to go forward. And the United States has always done this. We've always leveraged, even the conservatives have always leveraged the Middle East and Israel to our liking. And so the people who are in the know say this is probably not going to work out. Even Trump says this is probably not going to work out real well for Israel in the long run. We'll see. But I do believe that they will come out here stronger on the other side. But Hezbollah is going to continue to get stronger. Iran is going to continue to get stronger. There's no sanctions on them anymore. They're being handed money. And so we're going to go back to the status quo and looking for the next shoe to drop, if you will. So do not get caught up in, let me ask this question because I think we're going to talk about it maybe next week. Is anti-Semitism biblical? And the answer is no. Now, racism is not biblical either, okay? But anti-Semitism is actually, there's a curse against it, if you will. And we need to be really careful in getting caught in the trap that Satan is setting for the church in this issue. We need to understand God's promises. We need to talk biblically, understand biblical issues, and do not get caught in this trap because Christians are losing friends and they're losing prominence over these kinds of things. And this is exactly what Satan wants, and we need to be careful that the church is on the right stand here. So read your Bible, all of it, and say your prayers. Lord, we thank you for your love, and we worship you, Lord. Be with us as we go. We're very grateful for your mercy and love. We know that you have a plan for Israel, and we know that the end is not now. We know that there's many things in the Bible that continue to have to come. That doesn't mean that you can't take us home now. You may. But you have some stuff in store. And just help us to understand those things. Help us to stand on your word and be merciful in your anger, Lord God. We pray that you will save many through this time in Jesus' name. Amen.